Joined now by Bobby Burton of Inside Texas. And Bobby, what a game for Texas. That was a near collapse, but they held on. And I feel like this is a game that we've wanted to see Texas win for a long time, that they have not been able to win for a long time.
Andy, you're not wrong. I think myself and 100,000 other people in DKR on Saturday needed a defibrillator by the end of that one. It was back and forth. Texas jumped out to a huge lead, 27-7 at one point, and Kansas State came roaring back, scored a touchdown, and then on consecutive possessions, Texas turned it over inside their own 30-yard line. Immediate scores by the Wildcats, and all of a sudden it's a tie ball game thanks to a missed extra point. And it looked like a game that was well in hand for the Longhorns, and then the fourth quarter happened and crazy stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting because Maalik Murphy, who's the backup quarterback who's playing in place of Quinn Ewers, looked amazing for a quarter. And then K-State takes that extra player out of the box, says, we'll let you run for whatever you want to run for, but this dude's got to beat us with his arm. And boy, it changed everything.
It absolutely did. That's a great description of what exactly happened. He was 7-9 out of the gate, 150 or so. The rest of the way, he averaged roughly 3 yards per pass, which, as you and I know, that's just not winning football. But K-State, credit them. They hung around there. Texas also got a punt blocked. So it wasn't just Maalik Murphy. Jonathan Brooks, who is having a potential All-American season at Texas right now, the running back, he put the ball on the carpet for the first time really in a long time too. So it wasn't just a Maalik Murphy situation. It looked like the whole team was imploding. But back to your initial point, Andy, you mentioned this. You said this is a game that Texas normally might lose, right? Because they haven't been there. They're turning the corner a little bit. They're 8-1. Steve Sarkisian's 14-4 in his last 18 games. They're becoming a winning team and a winning program. A lot of that has to do with personnel, of course, but it's interesting.
It's very interesting because it's what they needed to get past. You got to be able to win the games you're supposed to win, and this is one that they were favored, but only slightly. Kansas State came in as one of the hottest teams in the country, and you knew you'd get the counterpunch at some point from K-State. And Texas did not play its best game. Like, if you look at what the score should have been, I mean, it's 27-7. It probably should have been 41-7 at that point. Texas didn't play its best, and it still beat a good team. And I feel like that is a big step that they've needed to take for a little while.
With its backup quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas won this game with its backup quarterback. And you're right. K-State, we talked about, was hot. Their last two games in the Big 12, they had won 82-3, a combined score. And so they were super hot. And you know what, though? I mean, I think Texas right now has the best defensive line in the Big 12, Andy. They shut down the K-State run game. This suffocated it. Listening to Will Howard post-game, he's like, we gave up trying to run. Yeah. And so,
Tavondre Sweat was unstoppable yesterday. Just absolutely unstoppable.
Absolutely. I mean, he's earning money. I mean, I talked to somebody inside the building yesterday about that. And, he is literally at this point in time pushing himself into a potential first-round grade. And this is a guy that probably would have been a 5th to 7th round pick a year ago.
Right.
And so he's moving that direction. They also have Byron Murphy's having a great year as well. That defensive front really made the Wildcats pay on Saturday and didn't allow a top 5 rushing offense in Kansas State to even get started. I think they had 39 yards rushing total.
Yeah. It was the first game without 100 all season. So it was interesting. And now you look at Texas's situation, and obviously it was a scoreboard watching day in the Big 12 because you had Kansas beat Iowa State, which knocked Iowa State out of that first place tie. And then whoever won Bedlam was going to be tied with Texas, and it was Oklahoma State, which I'm sure makes all the Texas fans very, very happy. So now they're in a situation where if they hold serve, they're playing for the Big 12 title, a potential playoff berth, all of that good stuff. But we saw what can happen at the end of that game. They've got to avoid that. So how do they avoid that against TCU and against Iowa State and Texas Tech?
Turnovers. I mean, really, if Texas turned the ball over 3 times, a couple of really bad ones. The Maalik Murphy interception gave K-State the ball at the 12-yard line. I also think they need to start finishing drives. Texas, they've had some issues in the red zone that are well documented. They tried to go for it again inside, I think it was the 11-yard line this time instead of inside the 10. It came up, had a play malfunction on them and didn't score. And so Steve Sarkisian's got to start getting in the end zone on some of these drives. But I'm telling you now, and Sark has been talking about this, not only is the team resilient, Andy, they've also been versatile. They've won games with defense. They've won it with offense. They've won it with special teams. And they're starting to show off some depth. They started a redshirt freshman offensive lineman on Saturday. It was his first extended action of the year. He came in for a guy that's going to be all Big 12. And they had no sacks, right? Yeah. Texas gave up no sacks in that game. And so their depth is being tested right now. And, they're coming through with pretty flying colors, I would say. I mean, it's just my thought on the Big 12 as a whole right now, to your greater point is, look, Oklahoma State, what a tremendous coaching job by Mike Gundy. I'm not so sure he didn't self-sabotage early in the year, trying 3 different quarterbacks. Once he's gone to Alan Bowman, he's been terrific. Colin Oliver's been a revelation of sorts for them. But I mean, I will say this: the non-pass interference call on Drake Stoops was, look, you could be a Texas fan and say, "My God, that's pass interference." Yeah. It happened to Texas too with Xavier Worthy twice. The Big 12 leaves a lot to be desired in officiating, in my personal opinion. But I look at it, and Oklahoma State has I don't want to say a cakewalk, but if you look at their schedule,
it's about as easy as it can be. Yeah.
You and I are on the same page. You and I, we're of one mind there. Texas is a little bit different. At TCU, at Iowa State, back-to-back, finish with Texas Tech. Those are 3 quasi-talented, quasi-good teams. You don't know what you're necessarily going to get that given Saturday from those opponents. But add in the fact that Maalik Murphy's turning the ball over like he is, and we don't know when Quinn Ewers is coming back or what the timeline might be. There's a little I don't want to say trepidation. I guess trepidation is the right word about
Probably,
it. Fans.
So that Oklahoma State schedule, for those who don't know, at UCF, at Houston, BYU, all new to the Big 12 teams. None of the new to the Big 12 teams have been good in Big 12 play this year. Basically, most of their wins are against one another. They're not beating the established Big 12 teams. So we'll see what happens with that. But you mentioned Quinn Ewers. He's got the AC joint injury. That's one of those that is a weird one in terms of healing time, and everybody's different. When do you think he might be back?
I think it's possible he's back against TCU.
Okay.
I think it's possible. He was throwing in practice last week. Now, what does that really mean, right? I mean, was he throwing was he throwing 10-yard passes, or was he throwing 25-yard passes? Was he stepping into it, or was he just I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about there. Yeah. We don't know. And I will say this: I would not be surprised if someone like Arch Manning, if Quinn Ewers can't go, if Steve Sarkisian doesn't look at Arch Manning at some point during that game against TCU, because Maalik Murphy had 2 interceptions on Saturday, probably should have had 4. I mean, they were in and out of K-State defenders' hands 2 other times. And so it's a precarious situation for Texas right now.
Yeah, although the Arch situation, if you had to, you could still redshirt him, because probably get Ewers back before, like, even if you make Arch the starter, you're going to get Ewers back at some point, and you can keep Arch under 4 games. But at Iowa State seems to be the trickiest one. That location, that team, that defense, it's been a problem for Texas over the years. So that's the one I would circle as, hey, you probably want to have him back if you can by then.
I would agree with you. And if you remember correctly, in Steve Sarkisian's first year, it was the game at Iowa State where Texas defensive line coach Bo Davis.
Oh yeah.
He let it rip on how he felt about some guys and how they weren't necessarily buying into team. That's a return trip to Ames, and Ames at night, not easy. I think Texas knows that. We'll see if it's a night game after all. But I mean, Andy, you're not wrong about what you're saying. The idea, though, that this is TCU's last shot at Texas.
Oh,
Iowa State doesn't necessarily have that kind of thought process, but Texas Tech, with all of what went on in the preseason with Brett Yormark and the associate commissioner of the Big 12 as well, I can't tell you that there's not some animosity there. I know for a fact Kirby Hocutt would, probably give Joey McGuire a raise if he just beat Texas, because all the wolves would be off of his back. That's for sure.
Well, the target will be on the Longhorns' back, because if Oklahoma State can rally through, then one of the remaining teams is going to play in the Big 12 championship game. I'm sure they would like it to be 2, but Texas would like it to be them winning on the way out. So we will see what happens. Bobby, thank you so much.
Andy, always a pleasure, dude. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.